Thank you, Daniel, and good afternoon, everyone. Maybe in trying to answer what's the future, maybe we can begin just by the present moment. We look here, I want to congratulate the Prince Mahudon Foundation. They came together a couple of years ago and said, let's have a dedicated session on vulnerable populations. And those of us who live in Thailand are fortunate enough to know the remarkable people that make up the Prince Mahudon Foundation. All of them are remarkable professionals, remarkable talented individuals, and they've come together to work together. And yet in their leadership role, they said it's important that we make space for serious and honest dialogue about vulnerable populations. We see sign language being addressed and used during the conference, and it's great to have people who are deaf here with us. We saw in this remarkable tape, this short video this morning about people with young children with physical disability in Ratchaburi province. I mention this because I think when we start to see this, we see what I call courage and bravery in leadership. Brave leaders, wise leaders, are not afraid to reach out to vulnerable populations and allow them to participate. That's what we see in the Prince Mahudon Foundation leaders. They're willing, confident leaders are comfortable and make the space, the dedicated space, to invite others to participate in processes that are important to them. I think a second thing that, in the future of what we've seen in the past and what we see today in the present, it takes courage. It takes courage. I wouldn't be able to do it, to stand up and be on a video doing sign. It takes courage for those young kids with physical disability in Ratchaburi to get on a three-wheeler and get themselves to school every day. It takes courage for the teacher and the local communities to welcome them into their school systems. I mean, this kind of courage is also in the vulnerable communities. And what we've seen is they're not asking for any special rights. They're just asking for the same rights that you and I and others enjoy. The right to participate, the right to health, the right to enjoy their sexual orientation and gender identity. This past week, I had the opportunity of meeting with Professor Vitit Mutaborn, the UN Special Envoy or Special Reporter on stigma and discrimination against people of gender identity, such as men having sex with men, transgender, and intersex. And what Vitit said is, we all have SOGI. We all have a sexual orientation and gender identity, except that some are persecuted for their identity and their gender orientation, and most of us are not. And what we're asking for is simply the same rights as everybody else. And I think that kind of a courage and willingness to speak out by individuals from vulnerable populations, rather than just to say, well, that's life, is really the key ingredient for success. I want to end just by saying that if I were to maybe make a pitch, I'd say, what do we heard this morning, we have more than 60 countries represented in this hall today, nearly 1,000 participants. And I know very well that many of you, most of you I don't know, but most of us know each other or someone in this room, and quite remarkable people. But if we were to make a commitment to each other, and to ourselves particularly, is that when we go back to our workplaces, when we go back to our government positions, our civil society or our NGOs or our donor funds, that we make an effort to identify and to reach out and to be proactive in reaching out to vulnerable populations. My experience in life, I've got, like many of us in this room, a string of academic degrees. But my best teachers in life have been the vulnerable communities. Those who've been willing to walk with me, and perhaps if I had shown a bit of interest to walk with them, they reciprocated that generosity 20 times. So I think if I were to make a pitch, Daniel, that maybe one of the things we could commit to each other is that when we go back to our workplaces, that we say, listen, maybe I don't know a lot about the sex work community, or people with disability, or rural populations, or people who are ethnic minorities, or refugees, people who are displaced, documented or undocumented, that we make an effort to actually go out and reach out to them to ensure that we're as smart as we would like us to be. So with that, I want to let time for questions and answers for the panel. So tomorrow there's going to be a dedicated session on HIV, but what I've tried to do is just capture what I've been fortunate enough, I think, to be taught by so many remarkable people in the last 35 years in the AIDS response, and that is to show courage, to be an activist, to be proactive in shaping your futures, not passive recipients, and then for all of us to make the special effort to be inclusive in whatever we do. Thank you.